This is Jeff Breedlove in conversation with Tarusa Stewart with IHOPE. Tarusa and IHOPE. Tarusa is a great recovery leader, and IHOPE is based in Warner Robins, Georgia. Tarusa, thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself as a leader, and then tell us about IHOPE.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, like Jeff said, my name is Tarusa Stewart, and most importantly, I am a woman in recovery. Is February will be 24 years that I have. Right, not to have any mind-altering mood changing substances or chemicals, and I've just been. It has allowed me to do things more intentional today, like speak out for my recovery, speak out for other recovery. So I'm excited about that. I'm also the founder and executive director of IHOPE Incorporated. IHOPE is an acronym that stands for Intentional Holistic Opportunities to Promote Empowerment. And we are housed in wonderful Warner Robins, Georgia. And we've been here for quite some time. We're actually going on doing this work 12 years.
That's very impressive. 12 years.
Yeah.
And y'all, I mean, for folks, so this podcast goes across the country. So if you're wondering, well, where is Warner Robins, Georgia? If you've ever been on Georgia on Interstate 75, it's sort of in between, Atlanta and Florida. I mean, it's a major
somewhere
on 75 in between Atlanta. They have a new Buc-ee's branded Warner Robins, and so a lot of folks have been to the new Buc-ee's. But Warner Robins also is just such an important part of our state. It's a big agricultural area, a military area, and
yes.
And so it's right in the heart of Georgia, if you're wondering. And Tarusa, one of the things that IHOPE has become a leader in, and there's many things, but one is being of service to people impacted by addiction who are currently in jail or prison, or maybe have been and are on parole or probation or wherever. But you've been bringing, in simple terms, recovery into jails. And that's a big deal, because I believe deeply that people, and I was charged with a felony. I was arrested. I went to jail, not prison, but I went to jail. Yes. People in these places, whether they should be there or not is a different conversation. While they're there, they should have access to services to address the medical issue of addiction the same way they do cancer and diabetes and everything else. That's what we want to talk with you about today. So tell us, first and foremost, in your words, why did you think it was important to bring recovery in to these institutions?
So that is a great question, Jeff. Upon the inception of IHOPE, we always hung our hat on the ability to help the people that was coming back to Warner Robins, Middle Georgia area, to help them make the transition from their therapeutic environment back into their natural community. And we definitely included jails and prisons in that. You have a lot of people that are transitioning back from these facilities who, first and foremost, got there because there was an underlying issue like substance use disorder and mental health challenges, right? And there have been these substantial amount of time in the prison system, in the jail system, probation or parole. And so it's really started from a focus group. The diversion centers were starting at that time with IHOPE, right? So we was getting our day reporting centers, was being birthed, accountability courts, mental health courts was being birthed, and some of the stipulations, although we did appreciate that it was being recognized that there are underlying issues. We can't keep sending people to prison. That is not the answer. So we did value that was happening, and they was looking at it from that perspective. However, nothing about us without us. In the creation of these diversion centers, there was still some stipulations that was, you could say a little bit, was making it a catch-22, right? And so, and that's when I thought it was important that we did a focus group, and one of the things that we asked was what would help with that transition. Outside of transportation, right? Because we live in a rural community. outside of that, rising to the occasion. That was one of the things they were saying too. We want people in there to help us make the transition. By the time we get out of here, we feel like it out back into our community. It's a little too late. We needed help more with the transition, and so yeah.
So there's stigma out there and there's bias, and we know that. We don't agree with it, but we understand that it's there. So what would you say to a elected official, particularly a sheriff or maybe a chief of police, which is appointed? Uh, what's the value to them of bringing this into their facility? Why is it a value add as opposed to a luxury that a criminal doesn't deserve? That's the stigma thinking. Why is this a net plus to a community to bring these services?
Yeah, so outside of the lived experience, right? Because the people we're petitioning to go in there fits the modality of that lived experience, right? It's somebody who has made that transition themselves, and not just made it, but sustained it, right? This is a different person. And so that's one thing that is valuable. One of the reasons why we think that is important. Reentry is important. Reentry is supposed to be a part of the incarceration system, and reentry starts the first day a person get into prison, right? The punishment is that they're already away from their families, they're away from their loved ones. That's the punishment, right? And so it helps as a gap filler. That's what I present. I presented that at we just received the MOU from Crawford County Jail. That is huge. And so meeting after meeting, one of the things that we presented was we want to fill the gap in your local jail. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? In your local jail, sometimes you have people sitting there because of some stipulations from the court, as small as they need to have a mental health evaluation. And so now you're in this rural community, they need to have a mental health evaluation that by a state psychiatrist, which is far and in between. So now somebody who should have been there for 90 days is now there for 2 years because somebody can't do the footwork. That's what we can do. We can do that footwork. We could be that liaison, right, for the returning citizen, and that's how we address them, and also that go in between, and so that even the COs and the sheriff departments, all those are recognizing that people are sitting here for a substantial amount of time that they shouldn't because of paperwork. We can handle paperwork.
What I think you just articulated is so important. And I suspect that there's sheriffs and staff members for law enforcement across the country that will listen to this. And while they kind of know something's not quite the best way, they haven't thought about it the way you just articulated it. And what I want to ask you is, on this premise, maybe somebody doesn't care the way that you care, the way that I care about returning citizens. Okay, we get that. But you should care about your budget in your jail. You should care about, somebody being there for 2 years instead of 90 days. So what you're saying, and take us deeper on that, is that when we bring people with lived experience, or what we might call peers, into the place, it actually helps save money. It actually helps move the system around. Even if your heart isn't with the returning citizen, it should be maybe with the practicality and budget of your own place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Because most of these jails are not set up to have a place that is specialized in helping somebody who has substance use disorder or mental health challenges, right? So it's just very generalized. It wasn't designed for that, so having us come in and be that boots on the ground can definitely separate those who need services, behavioral health services, really services, from those who scare us. We're not, some people, we're not trying to justify that people don't need to pay for their actions. Right. That is not what we're saying. But if you couple that with being able to support somebody and get to the core of what they need, then that can help things move along quickly. Like you said, budgets can be rectified, money can be saved. It costs more money to house a person in a jail or a prison than it is to help the paperwork to get them to a diversion center, to get them to a day reporting program where they can have a 12-week matrix model, where they can have a liaison like a forensic peer mentor walking alongside them, helping them sustain those emotional hardships that will show up.
Well, it
So
also seems like, and tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, but also when y'all come in and the peer voice is present, and of course it's all structured and professional and everything, but you're not just in there playing around. It's serious business. It also sounds like a lawsuit saver because instead of a person being there, we'll use your numbers, 90 days, 2 years. And also, I mean, most prisons, and I've been in a prison, I've been in a jail, I've been in prisons too, but I've been in prisons and jail as the executive staff member for an elected official. I've also been in a jail as a, an inmate. I've seen it from both perspectives. And there's no doubt that most Americans understand if somebody has diabetes or they have cancer or something, the jail's not going to not provide that service because they don't want a lawsuit.
right.
But for this disease, there's
Yes.
many jails and prisons and probation programs and parole programs that just don't provide it for this disease. So to me, it seems like you're also helping with the potential for lawsuits not happening because you're acknowledging this is a medical condition and you're saving.
Absolutely.
I mean, how does that work?
So that word's good. So first of all, we're right. It's important to say that on top of the lived experience, which is great and it's the creme de la creme, but there is still a set of skills that we show up with too. We show up with a set of skills, educations. We set up with evidence-based practices, best practices. We come and communion with the facility that we're working for and working with and alongside. We respect the safety of the jails. We respect that. And so it's definitely a collaborative effort and people being supported, right? This is a person, and let's take rural community for a minute, that as you say, is being recycled back into the system, right? So this is a person that you no longer want to see. We want to help them to not recidivize, and that just plays an essential part of that. Most of the people that we serve is because even underneath the substance use and mental health challenges comes from a lack of soft skills that wasn't there, right? And so we're able to effectively help that process using evidence-based material for holding a person accountable themselves, right? We don't co-sign, right? And but also providing a platform where healing can really help, just like any other medical condition.
And this is working in prisons, and I say prisons for the listeners just to simplify for time's sake, but it's working in institutions, facilities all over Georgia now, and IHOPE is leading the way. What would your message be to a stakeholder, regardless of their title, but especially a sheriff maybe, or somebody in law enforcement? They're like, I don't know about bringing these former drug addict civilians into my facility. I don't know about this. That may be a bridge too far. But other sheriffs have, other law enforcement leaders have. Yeah. What was it like building that relationship? And let's be blunt. I mean, I'm presuming it took a little relationship building time.
Yes.
Walk us through. And you're talking to a law enforcement leader somewhere in America that's maybe I'll do this. Tell them what it was like to build that trust, to build that relationship, and why it's good for them to believe in this.
Absolutely. Listen, it took probably about 2 years to build the trust just for the local community. Now, I need to tell you, my staff is in 16 prisons. So we're in 16 prisons facility, and that conversation happened back in 2015 as a pilot program. And so one of the things I would tell them is that it went from a pilot program to being a block funded program, which the value was seen through legislative eyes and through the government eyes for funding this, a set aside funding. So that's one thing that we need to look at, right? It made that transition, and it made it fairly quickly, fairly quickly, right? And then and so again, just for our local communities, is that what do you know, sometimes you have to help people remember why they do the work that they do, right? And so
Right.
why do you do the work that you do? And when you help them understand why you do the work that you do, then they could get a better perspective of why we're saying that this is beneficial for letting us come in there, because a lot of times you have to wear multiple hats, and we want to fill a gap for you. We want to be able to provide a service that is going to be conducive to every entity that's involved, right? And it reduces the potential harm to at least 5 entities: the returning citizens, the community at large, right, for safety. Just the potential harm of not knowing how to build and establish healthy relationships, right? And so there's a lot of things at large that is at stake if you let us come in. And this is another thing, we're funded. So we have a lot of RCOs that are funded that can come in, that it doesn't cause any dents in your budget. And that was the biggest hurdle, that they had a hard time believing. Let me just say that we were saying no. We don't need you guys to compensate us for coming in, but when you see the value of this, we need you to begin to write this in. We need this to be able to be wrote in moving forward. But I think that's the biggest thing. Was it going to be an event? What's the space going to look like? And so, yeah, we just got an MOU with a very small county, Crawford County, who they brought in their district attorney, who redlined the paperwork, and but they're excited because what pushed the needle for them was seeing people sit for 2 years who should have been going in 90 days.
Now, and that's so important. Crawford County, Georgia is a beautiful, wonderful, special place, but it's also exactly like so many other rural counties in America. So, it's unique and we love it, but it's also not dissimilar to hundreds and hundreds of other rural counties all across America, coast to coast, east to west, north to south. And the point you made earlier, I really want to ask you to dwell down on for a minute. There's, in layman's term, tell me if I'm right, over here in the legislative process, we're getting some money for recovery community organizations to do this. And you're not necessarily telling the sheriff or law enforcement it's got to come out of their budget. They just have to let this government program, government funded program, in the door. And that's important, I think.
That is so important. I think that was the biggest hang up, Jeff, for real, of establishing and getting to the, the meat and potatoes, that doesn't have to happen, and for some reason, they couldn't believe that, right? They just couldn't believe that, wait a minute, this seems too good to be true. And now let's talk about a culture for a minute. Let's talk about a law enforcement culture, right? And so we're presenting this to them, and these people are trained to think a certain kind of way, right? They're trained to analyze, to dissect, right? They're trained for safety. They're trained for, combat. They're trained for this. And so what you're saying to them, if it sounds too good to be true, they're looking through it from a different lens. And it takes consistency. It takes chipping away at that. It takes data, right? To show them, we showed numbers that we're doing this already, and this is the outcome of it. And it took all of that, and eventually we got it signed, we got it done, And so, it's a culture we come up against.
And it all sort of ties together because I was at an event recently, and a brother in recovery shared his story before a bunch of people, and he was 50-something-year-old guy who got arrested by the FBI for medical fraud, pretty serious white-collar crime. And they sent him to a low security federal penitentiary in South Carolina. And he goes in there. Now, he's already been in recovery from addiction, and he did some other, illegal things outside of drugs, if you will. But he gets sent to this prison, low security, and he said all over the building were drugs. Gangs were infiltrating low security prison. They were there, but he said there was a group of inmates. They weren't doing the drugs, but they were the minority. They had prayer groups. They just tried to hold together to resist the temptation of the boredom, of the monotony of just being there. And that struck a chord with me. He was telling it raw. He may not have been using all the right words. I may not be using all the diplomatic words. But in the real world, there was a guy, a brother who had found recovery, who found himself in prison for an unrelated to, if you will, drugs issue. And he was trying hard to find support. And the only support he could find was his fellow incarcerated folks. There was no program in there.
Yeah.
There were plenty of drugs in there.
Yeah. Yes.
But no program that the law enforcement said, here, guys and gals, go here, do this. Yeah. And that just bothered me.
Yes. And sometimes even in the indoctrination of our, therapeutic or our clinical staff, right, is still confined in their ability to even feel like they're making change, right? Or change is happening. So true story. I worked at Baldwin State Prison as a forensic peer mentor, right? Through the pilot program. And I would get young individuals and young men who come into my cubicle space just to cry because they knew that that's not what they can do out there, And so it's sad to say that sometimes some people become more criminals as a result of doing prison than going in there, especially when they were just trying to compensate for their drug craving. Or, you know what I'm saying? That's what they were feeding. That was the issue. And unfortunately, it's an environment that you have to become a survival in. And so that's why the forensic and going into jails is so important too. You have somebody who could simultaneously, in a way, address both of those things. I know that you are, probably tempted to participate in some activities, and I get that, right? But we just want to be that relief for you. We want to be that place where you don't have to become institutionalized. We want to be that hope shot in the middle of this. We want to flicker the flame of hope in the midst of all of this, and that's what we believe. We believe that people can get better. With evidence, right? With evidence, people can get better. With the evidence. And so that is very disheartening. One of the things I have to tell my team that goes into these facilities is, remember, we're creating a system within a system. There's a system we don't buck. We don't come up against. We ain't trying to go and change their system. But what we are doing is creating a system within a system, right? And
that's a wonderful phrase. That's a wonderful phrase.
Thank you.
A great way to look at it, right?
Yeah, because the weight of it, you're going into a culture. We want to make, we want to equip them as much as we can, and so that
I think more people on the inside would welcome that pathway, that opportunity. So let me ask you, we have time for one more question, and then we'll do a little wrap up. So there will be people listening to this that aren't in law enforcement, but they're business leaders, and they're maybe they own a business, or they're active in their chamber of commerce, or they're active in their Rotary or Kiwanis Club. What would you say to those type of community leaders and business leaders about why? So Jeff Breedlove goes to prison, and one on Earth One, there's no support for him, no treatment, no help, no support. And he just comes out he still in active addiction. He gets arrested again. He keeps going through the process. That guy, that Jeff Breedlove, just goes through it over and over and over again. And there's cost and safety issues. But on Earth 2 over here, Jeff Breedlove goes to prison, and that community has welcomed a program like yours where there's peer-led support there, where he can find recovery, understand he's not alone, understand when he gets out, there's places to go. And that person gets out and then goes to church, starts their family back, goes and finishes maybe some education, and gets a job and starts paying taxes and stops getting arrested and it becomes a taxpayer. Why should community leaders understand that's the choice they're facing? And if they embrace your type of program, they're going to get that guy who's going to become a taxpayer and a citizen that participates, as opposed to some guy that same community, those same businesses, those same leaders have to just endure. Tell them why they should tell their law enforcement to embrace this.
So, one, you want to have a program like this because they are coming back into the community. They're coming home. Eventually, everybody is coming home. How do you want them to come home? How do you want them to show up back into the community? That's one of the reasons strategically we call them returning citizens, right? We already want to start invoking the concept that you are welcome back. You know, Jeff, I thought about the mantra that we adopt, that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, that it is connection. And you made a great analogy of that. I thought about Rat Park, the experiment that happened, right? That's the first thing that came to my mind. You took a drug addicted rat and you put him in a cage and you offer him two choices, right? And then later on you take that same, and so that's the scenario. We're caging him, right? How do you want him to come back? And so then the second part of that is, but if you have a program like this to say, you know what, you are going to be welcome back in your community. Let me show you the resources that are felon friendly, because those are one of the things that they already think that it is over. I'm in here, I done did this bid. How am I gonna go out there? Ain't nobody gonna hire me. One of the number one things to our returning citizens, our male returning citizens, is employment. That bothers them. Number one, they want to become a productive member of society. Then they think, who's going to hire me? But if you have a program already saying, hey, we identified already 5 felon-friendly employers, right, that you can get another start. So this is what you're saying. This is what I would tell them. You know, if you don't want guy A showing up, let's show you how you could become a felon-friendly business. Let's see how we could become a felon-friendly community. And this is why we need to make that investment, because people do change. People do change.
That's wonderful. I mean, this is frontline in communities. It's real world. It's not academic, theoretical. It's a choice that each community gets to make. And IHOPE is leading the way to demonstrate how if you're willing to embrace change, maybe something even a little scary, that you make it better, not only for the individual justice impacted person, the returning citizen, if you will, you make it better for the whole community. And I do think that what you're doing, you and your team, is saving lives, restoring families, and you're strengthening communities. It is literally the personification of that phrase. Look, we keep these conversations short so people will listen to them. But Tarusa, you and IHOPE, tell people how they find you on social media.
Absolutely. So we have our Facebook page and our Instagram, which is IHOPE Inc. INC. Our Instagram is IHOPE_RCO. Our website is IHOPEinc.org, and you can find us there. Reach out to us and give us a call. We'll give you more information. We'll see how we can make our community more friendly for those who are coming back from therapeutic environments like jails and prisons.
Yeah, I don't care where you are in this country. If you're looking for subject matter experts who know how to help bring peer-led recovery into the criminal justice space, don't hesitate. Reach out to IHOPE, because they're truly the very best. Tarusa, thank you for your time today.
Thank you,
thanks to IHOPE. And you know, we always say that recovery is real.
It's real.